economic development and tourism. Welcome to our webinar, where we will be sharing some of the outcomes of a pilot project we implemented earlier this year to support tourism enterprises with their sustainability journeys. I see that we have participants from across the industry and the province, and I just saw Dawn Robertson joining all the way from Joburg. So that's super exciting that we actually have interest from around the country. And I think generally it is really encouraging to see the level of interest in the work that we've been doing for this project. I also know that there are businesses joining us today who were participants in the project, and also businesses who applied to participate in the project, but were unfortunately not selected because we could only accommodate 15 businesses. With us, we have two participants from the project, and I'll introduce them a bit later. We've got Kotso Micha who is the founder of Southern Explorer, and then also Elmay Beauvert, who is the owner of Blackwaters River Nature Lodge, based in the Garden Route. Also joining us is sustainability expert, guru, cheerleader extraordinaire Lisa Scriven, who facilitated this project on behalf of DEDAT. I think before I ask my guests to introduce themselves, perhaps let me just also start by explaining why we embarked on this project. And I think generally it's been a worry of mine for a few years now that we tend to see the same Western Cape businesses being nominated for the Responsible Tourism Awards, which takes place annually at WTM Africa. And obviously there are world-class sustainable products in the province, but why were we not seeing smaller businesses being nominated? About a year and a half ago, we invited industry to participate in a survey. The intention was to understand what businesses are doing with regards to sustainability, and also to understand the challenges that they were faced with. We got a really poor response, and only about, I think, 60 businesses completed the survey. And usually when we do surveys, we get up to 200 responses. I think a major shift probably occurred early last year, when the EU passed the EU Green Claims Directive. And I think that really brought about a shift with businesses realizing that sustainability is not only an ethical imperative, but also a competitive imperative. From our survey, we also realized that business owners felt intimidated and overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. And that's how this pilot project really took shape. We invited the industry to apply to participate in the project, and we received 85 applications. We then followed quite a rigorous selection process to narrow down to 15 businesses. And the selection committee was really looking for businesses that not only met the formal criteria for the project, but also were already taking measures to make their operations more sustainable. And I think we are super proud of the caliber of participating businesses. Lisa will take us through the list of these businesses. I think the first thing to say is that all 15 businesses completed the project. And I should also say that this was during the height of season. And that's quite rare. We often find that when we do projects at the department, that sometimes people do fall out. So we're very proud that all participating businesses actually stuck it out. And then I think also in other exciting developments, two of the participants received amazing recognition this year. Township and Village, based in Stellenbosch, they won a gold at the 2025 World Travel Market Africa Responsible Tourism Awards this year. And so I need to congratulate Renee and Nicolette and the team. And I think I saw Nicolette join the webinar. So congrats, Nicolette, to you and your team. And then more recently, this week, we also heard that Cape Adventure Brands received partner status from both Travel Life and Fairtrade Tourism. So huge congratulations to Quentin and his team. Okay. Now, in terms of the format of this webinar, I'm going to start by asking Kotso and Elmay to just talk us through their experience of participating in the project. And then from there, I will ask Lisa for a formal summary of the project and also just touch on some of the key outcomes and possibly recommendations in terms of how we can take sustainability forward, particularly with regards to smaller tourism enterprises. And then from there, we will go into Q&A. We will be using the Q&A function. So when you look at the top ribbon of your screen, you'll see there's a chat function. Please use that chat function to speak to one another or tell us who you are and where you are joining from. But if you want to pose questions to any one of the panelists, then please use the Q&A function. We will then pick up any questions and I'll pose those questions to the panelists. Okay, all right. So to start, Kotso, let me start with you. Can you please tell us briefly about yourself, your business, and also why Southern Explorer applied to participate in this program?
Thank you, Jacques. And firstly, thank you for the opportunity to be part of the program, and being selected was incredible. It was a fun journey. Getting to work with Lisa was incredible as well. I'm based, we're a tour company based in Cape Town, and we operate across multiple regions in Southern Africa, Lesotho mainly, and Garden Route in Cape Town being a big focus of our tours. And for us, working with international agents especially, it was always a question of, what are you doing differently? And working in rural communities especially, it was quite important for us to try and figure out a way to work, I guess, ethically, and the big buzzword of sustainability has been thrown around quite often. And for us, we'd never really interrogated our business in terms of what practices do we actually have that exist, and how can we improve. So hearing about the project, it was, it almost came at the perfect time. We'd had a European agency who'd actually declined to work with us because we had no certification to prove that we were a sustainable tour company. And, at first I was really frustrated and quite upset, thinking, here we are trying to do everything that we can and trying to work in the right way that we think is possible with these communities, but without any form of recognition or approval or certification, entity as big as they were not willing to work with us. So when this opportunity came about, I just thought, how lucky we were to be selected to be part of it. And going through the project, it was so amazing to realize that we were basically fulfilling quite a lot of the things that were required in order to get certified. So first I thought, oh, it's going to be so daunting, paperwork, and someone's going to have it's like peeking into your wardrobe, and having to see every single part of your business. But it was actually so great because in that way we get to review systems, update systems, and we also got to sort of look at how we can do things a little bit more different, especially within our own staff and how we work with our staff, how we work with suppliers as well. And those were kind of things that, yes, we were doing a lot of those things, but there were so many things that we'd overlooked, that, through the help of Lisa, it was quite an easy fix as well because the systems were partially there. The paperwork was almost 90% there, and it just needed a little bit more tweaking. And our big emphasis with Southern Explorer is to travel with purpose. For the traveler to come and have an impact in Africa, and for the locals to have an impact on the traveler. So I think now, with all the tools that we've been given, and hopefully being able to get certified soon enough, we'll be able to put it out there and loudly vocalize everything that we're doing. And that was the other thing that Lisa also mentioned, is that we should be proud and actually show people what it is that we're doing as businesses internally, that is making an impact. And I think, yeah, especially for a destination like ours, we've got so many businesses that are already doing these things. And this project basically just highlighted that we shouldn't fear the sustainability buzzword. It's things that almost every single business is actually doing. And now it's just about showing the world. And getting these accreditations is one of the ways that we can actually put a stamp on it, just to say that we are doing things right and we are a sustainable tourism community.
Great. So I think you mentioned like possibly the sense of feeling intimidated, but were there kind of challenges that you faced during the process?
So I think the biggest challenges, especially being a smaller company, is, I guess the paperwork and really looking at the systems and making sure that your, safety management systems, your standard operating systems, that all those systems are actually firstly coherent, they make sense, and that they are at a, I guess, internationally recognized standard. So that was the intimidating part, and then putting all of that into an actual working document, that is probably also quite a challenge. And as you mentioned, the whole project took place over the busiest time of the year. So, you're always fearing, again, I guess this is the fear of any small business, that the inadequacies that exist. But I think working through things step by step, and also having the cluster meetings and having Lisa visit the office and meeting the team, she could identify quite quickly in terms of where to jump in, and where to help us, and also just letting us know that we are actually doing the right things, and not to fear the paperwork, because we're so hands-on and we're out and about and we're on the road, and committing staff members to now, these what you think are going to be hordes of paper, um, is actually just, sitting down for a couple of minutes a day, and just working through step by step. So that was the initial challenge, is just getting all the information together so that it can actually go into a system that vets all of this information. And yeah, doing it over season was definitely definitely quite challenging.
Was there anything that surprised you, that you thought that perhaps you didn't think that you were already doing well?
Yeah, I think most of those things really surprised me, and we laughed about it because you often think it's a big company thing. It's big business that's able to do all of these systems and vettings and certifications. And I guess as you grow as a business and you realize that you're actually ticking off quite a lot of boxes here, our work in communities, our policies around wildlife interactions, our policies with staff and employment, and just ethically as a business and as a business owner, think it's probably quite different when you're doing it on your own. You have all of these ideas on your own, and you're building your business and there's no one to sort of bounce things from an outside perspective, especially in the world of sustainability. And this was the first time that we got to sit with someone who actually acknowledged that, hey man, you're actually doing really well. You've got so many of these systems and ideals in place. You just maybe have to work on cleaning up that paperwork over there, make sure that those policies are actually visible, and that you can now have a set of documents that if anyone at any time wanted to view the legitimacy, that it is on paper. Going out and sort of talking to everyone and telling everyone that you're doing these things isn't really enough. But if you can actually put it on paper and you have it documented, and you can actually trace throughout the year, throughout the season, and you have a method to trace what you're doing with your work, especially as an operator that is going to multiple communities and multiple areas and doing so many activities, we have now a system to show that our itineraries do not do any wildlife interaction, and we do not support communities that do X, Y, and Z. So if we have that on paper, and we can actually show it to any agency that wants to come and interrogate us, that makes you feel so good about yourself and about your business and about the work that you're actually doing.
Then I think my next question is, what's the way forward for you? Are you looking at formal certification? Is that something you are considering?
100%. I think the journey also just made me realize that, we have to be vocal, I think, as a destination, as businesses, no matter how big or small, just to sort of amplify the voice of sustainable tourism within our region, within our continent. We're always comparing numbers about how we're bouncing back after COVID and comparing to other nations. But our destination probably has, amongst the best wildlife. There's so much that we can actually show the world. And I think through sustainability, whether it's the Western Cape, South Africa, Southern Africa, or Africa, I think our destinations should definitely go out and show that we are a sustainable destination. And certification through Travel Life, and now looking at fair trade tourism, because we also run an accommodation establishment on the garden route. These are the kind of certifications that I really want to go after, not to sort of tick boxes or just to pick up another badge. It's really to firstly interrogate ourselves, because they allow you to look inwards when you are doing these certifications, but also just as a proud sort of stamp of approval, so that every traveler that is dealing with us, and if they are maybe looking at competitors or anyone else, they can actually see that we are willing to be scrutinized, and we are willing to do the work to show that we are a sustainable business.
Okay, and then before I pivot to Elmay, what would be your one or two tips for other tour operators, DMCs, wanting to embark on a similar kind of journey? in terms of sustainability?
I would say stop the skepticism. So I think a lot of people are quite skeptical. Who are foreign entities to look at me while I know I'm doing what's correct. It doesn't matter. I think the less skeptical we are, and the more vocal we are, and the more willing we are to participate in certification programs like these, the better it is for the entire destination. So I think the less skeptical we are, and also just like I said, I feared it because I was worried that it might highlight things that I'm doing wrong. Instead of looking at it in that way, maybe have a look at it in the sense that, what can I improve on what I am already doing? So just shift of mindset, I think, would probably allow, especially tour operators, because I just thought, we're on wheels, but your wheels go to places. So my fear was my carbon emission. But, if we're running group tours, they're shared group tours. And when we're going to destinations, we're quite picky about what we're going to do in those destinations. And after all, we're taking people from place to place. So you do have a certain responsibility as a tour company. And I think if you stop fearing judgment and you look at rather just amplifying the good that you're already doing, that's that's a small hurdle to get over, I think.
Okay, great. Just a reminder to those who just joined, if you do want to ask Khotso any questions, please post your questions using the Q&A function and not the chat function. You'll see the Q&A top in the top banner of your screen, and then later on we will come back to those questions. Thanks, Khotso. So now we're going to shift gears. Elme, welcome to the webinar. I'm going to ask Elme to just tell us a bit more about Blackwaters River Nature Lodge based in the Garden Route, and also what made Black Rivers apply to the program. Welcome, Elme.
Thank you very much. My mic's working today, and I'm fully aware that if I'm going over my time, that I'm going to be muted. Lisa made that very clear. I am the very proud owner of this beautiful little magical piece of paradise on the Gokama River between Knysna and Sedgefield. I think my business over the last few years, I'm not sure whether I've been more closed than open and operating, because we were faced with continuous and natural disasters. And I think one of the reasons where we are today and still going on is because of all the lessons that I've learned in crisis management when a river flood or when the fires came, or during COVID. So very interesting, we were only open a year and 2 months before we had to close again for COVID. And I think all of that has made me a bit, I think Khotso said that when the program came out, the reason why you join, and sometimes you're worried about whether you are doing the right thing. I think I've never been worried about that. I love what I'm doing. So I don't really care whether anyone thinks I'm making mistakes. I can deal with it. But what I do as a personal, I like to test all these systems. So I sometimes, and with all the operators that are listening, I won't mention names, but you get these emails from them in the beginning of the year. You have to fill in what you are doing to look after the environment. Where are you repurposing, recycling? And you look at these forms and you think, where do you come from? And if I fill this in, where is this going to actually help me? And then DEDAT or the department will send out things, and I will start applying for something and think, let's see how this is going to roll and how this is going to work out. And I said to Lisa, with all of that kind of wanting to test the system, whether it is working, it has brought a total different change in my business, because in the beginning I said to her, but who are the operators that are on this journey, and will they be looking at whether we change our way of doing business, and will they appreciate the fact that if we do implement certain practices, will they actually share that with their guests and say, but we have to make use, you don't have a choice. And it was a bit, if I look honestly at it, it was a bit money driven from my side, because I thought, oh, maybe I will even get my occupancies higher. And going into the process, exactly what Kotso has said is that many of the things we were already doing, but there has been a total change in our dynamics in the business about how we feel about things, how we look at all the rubbish that we had. So we already don't receive. Kotso mentioned about being in the township tours, doing tours in townships. We are in an area where we don't get any municipal services. We already use water from our river. We pump from the river, we reuse that water. We already have to, or had to, make a plan with all our rubbish. And it was an easy thing. We just go and dump it at one restaurant. That was the areas or what we do here, because we're right next to the N2 and we cannot put black bags out on the N2. And it was easy to just take it, and then there's one spot where the truck will come and fetch it. And I think with starting with it in season time, I think my first meeting with Lisa was on the 7th of January or somewhere, but she introduced the system. I was very cocky with her and said, but yeah, I want to know how many operators and how is this going to change my life? And she said, let's go through it. She toned me down a bit and let's go through this. And I think, number one, I want to say that it's her passion that came out, in her calmness and her believing in what she's doing and what should happen, that let me back off a little bit and started to really think about my business. And I am very much part of the Garden Route Skills Mecca at that stage with 10 intern students. Heaven knows why I took 10, but I've got 10. And I said to her, I'm going to also try and make them part of this whole process. And I just can't explain to anyone how the youngsters, and I moan about them because they want their phones, they don't finish, all the things. We've had a question from Haneli of Satsa before in Daba about what the youth is doing. It was amazing, the one thing that they got involved in and that they actually took charge of was this whole sustainable tourism thing, and what I've identified as probably the most important. And we did start with waste. I am ashamed to say that Blackwaters River Lodge has put out 22 of these big municipal dustbins. We had to take photos and show Lisa. And we started with our own recycling process very easily, because people said to me, it's not going to work. I spoke to other restaurants, I spoke to other lodges, and we started with 3 smaller little areas for the plastic, and we started to divide them there, clean them. Everybody, though, were involved in it, not myself and well, myself as well, but I like to scratch in bins and look what's going on there. But it was horrific to see what people throw away. And we all started, all the staff got involved, and we've got the 3 areas and then our final area. And I am very proud to say that since March, or when we started with the cluster meetings and Lisa on site, we are now down to 4 dustbins in that we put out per week. We are on a very good recycling relationship with the recycling people in Knysna, and I'm not going, if you want to hear one negative word out of my mouth about Knysna, you won't. But I want to tell you, we are facing severe challenges in our area when it comes to our waste, when it comes to our water. And I just see the difference that happened here from 22 dustbins with a recycling plant that's working, or people, they come every Thursday. And they come and fetch, and they spend time with us. They taught us what to put, what can't. They brought us posters. So already there, and I am together with that. I think for me, we already see ourselves as where we are situated as environmental protectors. We are part of the Gokama Nature Reserve and Marine Protected Area. We work with sandparks. I am busy involved there with the governance and management plan of the Knysna estuary. So the whole garden route, or Knysna, is situated in a national park. So it feels to me we don't have a choice than to do the sustainable tourism thing. And it can work because it's working for us out of town. I've received a voice message on my phone this morning. The person that normally deals with the guy from recycling saying, May, remember, I'm off, but Dennis is coming with or to fetch the recycling. So it's become our everyday life. I will admit, I did assist in our restaurant with we had about 150 Harleys, and we were short of waiters, and I had to carry and help a bit, and the bins were all there. And after a while I thought, no, this is nonsense, and I start just throwing everything in the same bin and say, oh, we'll sort this out later. So there are those days, but it has become a habit. We have also started very much so. You can go and look on our website, even with our business conferences, with our wedding packages, specifically now for Knysna Oyster Festival. We have started to communicate our journey, and we've said this is where we want to be. This is what we are busy doing. So, and we gave them advice, instead of using balloons, can you please use material bunting? Instead of using the paper confetti, where you in actual fact just mess on the grass and we have to clean it up. I don't say that, but that is how I felt. I'm just saying, no, why don't you use fresh leaves or dried flowers? So in all of our packages, even for the conferencing, bring your refillable bottles. So it's really starting to just become our way of living. People will ask me, but what about your financial gain that you wanted in the beginning? And so maybe not any pressure on the bookings anymore, but for sure I'm busy saving money on the water that we've started with, refillable glass bottles, no more plastic. And that, if I had longer time, I would have very clearly gave those figures as well, because that is probably the one thing that Kotsos mentioned, and we now have to document everything. It's not only saying we're doing it, but we can document it and we keep track of that. There are so many good things that happened, but I don't want to be put on mute today.
Yeah, look, I absolutely, your enthusiasm is incredible. And I think what you touching on is a very, very important learning from the project, which is that you have to involve all staff in the process. And it becomes like a entire kind of business endeavor, and it can't just be the owner or the management driving it, but it is about involving all staff. So I think that is really important. In terms of next steps for you, are you thinking of further certification, or how do you see this playing out for you?
Okay, so I've got always these little deadlines in my diary. So for sure, I don't think we will now say no to it, because it's just become a habit and how we live it. Everything, we even take the recycling and see how can we repurpose this, reuse it. So we are having our grading for the Nature Lodge in the first week of June. Then so we are already met, or we already met the 72 points, I think, Lisa, that I would like, that will be an internal audit online on the fair trade, on that program, the fair trade tourism program. And then by the 1st of September on Spring Day, that's when I would like my full fair trade tourism certification to make it part as a launch of Spring Day. So yeah, for sure,
Fantastic.
that's not, yeah, we're now too far in the project and all these documents and doing it to not actually have it. I do, though, it is important for me, and that it's not only another badge. If I really wanted the badge, I think it's easy to push it, but it needs to become the way we do business, because through what's happening in our town, in our area, weather-wise, and let's mention European laws, we don't have a choice to move towards this. Needs to become our way of living and our way of doing business. So that certification will only be the formal piece of paper in my hand, will be the final cherry on top of the cake.
Okay, and then before we go to Lisa, any final tips for other accommodation establishments, similar businesses such as yourself? Where should they start?
I think for the smaller businesses, you see all the media hype about legislation. You are afraid that you are going to totally fall out. You worry about what are you going to do, how you get totally flustered. But when you actually join a program or get involved in it, Khotso said it as well as I am, there's already so many things that you do right. And saying that if you do it and you live true to what you are saying you are doing, and you are communicating that, and the most important thing is getting your guests involved with your efforts once they are here and sharing it with them, they become your best promoters and the best people who clap hands and the ones who will give feedback to your operators, and that will say, but we want to go back to that place. Or in the evaluation forms, we want to ensure that we stay at that specific guest house. I do want to say that it is, from my side, it's an owner involvement. It is my property. I love what I'm doing, so I am very involved. But for anyone who starts it can't be your lowest paid or staff member, or your lowest appointed position staff member, neither your hires. You need to get them all involved and mix them and let them all feel that they are equally responsible for this. And I think that is when you've got the winning recipe. You kind of need to show it on your face if people ask you. They need to believe in what we are doing here in order for the whole sustainable tourism thing to work. You can't say we are going to do this for a better future, but our faces are like, why the hell should we do this?
Great, thank you, Elme. Lisa, over to you. So Lisa will take us through the project. She's got a few slides. She will just explain a bit more about the methodology that was used, and then also just, I think, just share with you some of the experiences in terms of what came from the actual businesses. And I think also Lisa has got some important recommendations for future interventions of this nature. Thanks, Lisa.
Super. Thanks, Jacques. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and we can see your slides.
Okay, super. Great. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Great to see so much interest, and thanks to Khotso and Elme for joining as well. It's really nice to hear your feedback after the grueling process I put you through, and that it's landed positively with you. And also thanks to the department. As Jacques mentioned, this was a little bit experimental in terms of, piloting new ideas around how to dispel some myths and demystifying, if you will, the idea of sustainability and what that means in your business. Also trying to figure out how do we ensure continuity. And then as both Khotso and Elme mentioned, sort of preparing the market for upcoming legislation. So we tried things, some new things. And I think they worked really well. Some lessons learned, and yeah, I think overall it was really positive. So it was a real pleasure to be able to be part of it. The 15 businesses, as you can see, 8 of them were tour operators based in Cape Town and the Winelands. All of them small businesses, quite different. Some sort of running their own activities in a more localized area. Some sort of running tours across the region. So there was a good spread in terms of diversity of like how big is your team and what are you doing. So there was a lot of opportunity to learn from each other. The Winelands cluster, also some diversity there, all small businesses, and they went from Ceres all the way through to Stellenbosch. And then the garden route, we had the 3 businesses, Blackwaters River Lodge from Elme, who's here with us today, Forest Gate Eco Estate, and Mamzo's Corner. So everybody offered a little bit something different. So again, exchanging ideas, experiences. How did you do that? How does this work for you? That was one of the things we wanted to test with this approach to the clusters, is how do we get businesses to collaborate with each other on the concept of sustainability, finding solutions, networking, how they overcame challenges, and then competing on bed nights is always going to happen, but we all have a common interest in making the destination more sustainable. So that was the distribution. Timeline, it was very tight. As Jacques mentioned, it actually fell over peak season in the region, which added some complexity. So again, my thanks to all the participants for sticking with it and making time. Everybody participated in all of the activities, and contributed actively. So it was really rewarding. The 3 phases, I'll just take you through quickly. I'm cognizant of time. So onboarding, depending on the type of business, we selected 2 sustainability frameworks for the businesses to use as their guide on how to sort of address what they're doing operationally. The DMC's tour operator cluster, they looked at the Travel Life platform. The reason that was selected is because they're GSTC recognized, their standard is. And then the accommodation, venues, and activities, they use the Fair Trade Tourism platform. That's a Travelist compliant platform. So there is global endorsement of both of those sustainability frameworks. Okay. And the reason there are two is if you think about how a tour operator impacts, it's operationally, like it's internally, but it's also around their supplier selection. So that's sort of probed a little bit more in depth with the TravelLife platform. Whereas accommodation, venues, activities, you can imagine like there's almost like a boundary for them in terms of how they impact. So the Fair Trade Tourism framework looks at that and interrogates that a little bit more aggressively. So it's just because of how they engage with the tourism ecosystem that we use the two frameworks. Okay, so then we took everybody through a baseline audit, if you will. So on the left, you can see that's the whole sort of all the questions. And we did a really rapid assessment. It took a few hours of people saying, yes, Lisa, no, Lisa, yes, Lisa. And it was really useful to give everybody a starting point, first of all. So they got an idea of what they're doing well and things they hadn't thought of. It also, of course, helped us to design action plans on where to focus their individual support as well as the cluster focus areas. Okay, and it also served the purpose of everybody sort of at the end of it going, oh, okay, I get the full scope of what it is I'm supposed to be looking at. Okay, so it was also, I think Hotso mentioned this, it was kind of nice for them to say, wow, I'm actually already doing a lot. Got some gaps, but that's what the project's for. So yeah, this was probably one of the most constructive parts of the project, was getting everybody diving in the deep end, but also understanding where they're at. Yeah, so then everybody got an individual action plan, but then it also helped me to figure out where to focus the cluster meeting attention. So that the cluster meetings, that was the training and mentoring, that was on site at various venues throughout the region. We had two, one at the beginning of the project, right after the rapid assessments, the baselines, and one, excuse me, one towards the end. All of these were held at venues that focus on sustainability. That was another sort of intentional part of the methodology, is for people to be able to see what this looks like in action, so operationally. It included, the first cluster meetings were all at certified businesses. And the second ones, we tried to diversify it a little bit, so not necessarily certified, but venues that focus on sustainability. And also the tour operator one included a guest speaker from a business that is TravelLife certified. So thank you to Tales from Africa Travel for contributing and helping out with the networking of good practice and successes and challenges. And yeah, like I say, we also had a site tour of all of the businesses. So we had Hotel Verde, Eau de Verf, and In Toto Retreat. All were kind enough to show us around their property and what they're doing. And so that was a good...
I see, Lisa, I see Roland is also in the audience. Thank you, Roland, from In Toto.
Great. Yeah. So that was also really useful, again, at the dispelling myths kind of idea, and how do you overcome challenges, and also acknowledging, imperfections and what you're working on. So I think that helped people to sort of stay focused and motivated that they can do this stuff too. So that was fun. So then we kind of looked at what are our strengths and weaknesses? And this is the numbers you're seeing now, these are aggregated. So this is all of the participants. This is actual results of their baseline assessments. And this is from the Fair Trade platform. I'll share the TravelLife one with you in a moment. But this is the first time I've done this in terms of analyzing data in terms of weaknesses. I mean, I've got my own ideas around where do businesses struggle, et cetera. But it was nice to sort of have the science-backed, empirical data to sort of also show this. So if you see these areas where everybody's scoring pretty high, these are all around action. So it shows us, people are doing stuff where, it's in good business practice, it's around socioeconomic benefits, cultural heritage, and biodiversity. So people are taking positive steps in those spaces. And if you look at where it's a little bit lower, interestingly, it's around the systems, the policies, the communication, okay? And then also around monitoring, the environmental impact side, although they're taking some action, monitoring was really, people just aren't quite on top of that yet. So this is, the hypothesis was this is how it would be, but it was kind of nice to see that, well, it was reassuring to see that, okay, this is where businesses need help. And if we look at the travel life system, their framework is set up a bit differently. But similarly, you can see in the middle, this is around where how they select suppliers, how they take action internally and externally, so scoring really high. And then the lower scores relatively were around systems, policies, tracking, and communication. So across the whole set of 15 businesses, the weaknesses were in the same areas. So that's what we tackled. We looked at management systems, communications, and monitoring. Okay, and I just want to go through quickly why it's important, because these weaknesses are also, addressing these are also going to help you in terms of shifts in the market, being prepared for legislation, strengthening your business and helping your business grow. So if we look at the first one, management systems, okay, this includes written policies and procedure, which everybody hates, I know, but they're important. They don't have to be massive, huge documents that sit on a shelf. They can be simple, okay? And I think that's something everybody learned in this, is just describing what you're doing. So again, the demystifying, what does this have to look like? It needs to be relevant for your business. But the important thing is if you want your business to grow, having the management systems in place is essential. Okay, if you think you're going to grow and still be doing things kind of ad hoc and like really disorganized, you're going to struggle. So yeah, if you want growth, then get the systems in place. It's a little chicken and the egg, but let's go chicken first. Communications, the second area of the biggest weakness. This is internal comms, also external. So internal was staff, getting everybody on board, making sure people can provide feedback, you know, having that dynamic space to make things happen. It also makes your life easier if you get everybody on board. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting yourself, as Elme was saying. And then externally, which includes your guests and your suppliers, of course. Your suppliers, it's all about sort of affecting change within your sphere of influence. So can you get them to get more sustainable products for you, or get rid of the packaging, or make sure it's a local small company that they're, you know, sourcing the goods from for you. And then in terms of the guests, so how to effectively speak to the shift in traveler preferences and demand. So I want to just quickly look at that. So, I mean, we all know that people are saying, yeah, we want to travel more sustainably, we're acting more sustainably, etc. They don't always do it, so we need to make it easy for them. But what is really clear is the shift in how they want to travel. They want to connect with local people. They want to have more authentic experience, you know, taste food, hear the music, learn the language. You know, there's a lot of this, get out in nature, be more active. And those all actually align with sustainability. So in your external communications, weaving that into your story is really, really important. So we worked on that a lot with the businesses and how they might be able to do that. The last section then was about monitoring. This was a really interesting one. Okay, so it's effective management is a big deal. People said, I had no idea it was so important to monitor. Like, this actually makes sense to me now. So it was partly in relation to where to allocate resources. So for example, a few of the businesses, we managed to get to the point of calculating carbon footprint. And they were focusing in the wrong areas in terms of low-hanging fruit. So actually monitoring and figuring this out, they're like, wow, I should be actually focusing here instead of here. So that was really useful. And then also, I think just the reassurance of what can be achieved even by small businesses. So once they started to look at the scale of their impact, they realized, wow, this is a lot more than I thought. So that was a very big deal. The marketing side of things also in terms of monitoring, when we went through a number of examples of how other businesses are doing this, so they are monitoring and then weaving that into their marketing and communications, their storytelling. So when you've got the monitoring, you've got the data to back it up, it makes your story much more compelling and high impact. Okay, so your B2B relationships, your consumer, convincing them that what you're doing is legitimate, you need to be monitoring in order to do that. So that was another thing that really hit home throughout the project. And then, of course, preparing for source market legislation implications, which Elme mentioned. So specifically what we're looking at there, which we know for sure and is already in place, is the EU green claims. So this is basically saying anybody who makes claims in the European market, they need to be sustainability claims, that is. They need to be clear, transparent, not saying more than they're doing, so no greenwashing. They need to be backed up by data, so it can't be wishy-washy. It can't be like, yeah, we're eco-friendly. Like that's very, very meaningless. So you need to be really specific about what you're saying. And there's been legal action already in place, especially in the EU market, around these misleading or false claims. So it's something we need to be sensitive to. So the monitoring part of this project was really useful here. And it helped us also to dispel any kind of myths or fears around it. It doesn't mean you can't say what you're doing. It just means be clear. Okay. So the monitoring gives you the data to be able to do that confidently. There is other legislation, which we didn't go into too much. It's around reporting, but we did use the legislation out of the EU around sustainability reporting to help us with the next activity we tackled, which was looking at how we impact in South Africa. Like, how do you think you make a difference? So we took the EU legislation and what they thought should be done. And it was unanimous among all the participants that the socioeconomic impacts that they're looking at are way different here, and they needed to be fleshed out a lot more. So we made our own. All the clusters went through all the ideas around economic impacts, social impacts, and environmental ones, and what do we think we should be looking at in terms of what's relevant for our challenges and our local development priorities. And then we took it and we prioritized. So this is kind of what it whittled down to, which was really interesting. So environmental was pretty consistent. Water, carbon, waste, biodiversity. Okay. Everybody it was conclusive and unanimous that we need to look at that. Social, and economic, as I mentioned, which the European Union legislation is really light on. Training and social development support were what the participants in the project thought that was really important for us. And then economic was looking at support for small business, jobs, and then something called an economic nutrition label, which is a borrowed methodology. It's not developed through this project, but it's basically it's looking at leakage, like so how much of the price paid stays in the destination. So all the participants in the project, when we did the on-site support, we sort of started playing with these impact indicators and looking at how they could weave some of these into their own storytelling. Okay. So I guess the bottom line was, if they can, and what they decided was if they can start to do this, they're not only preparing for the legislation that's coming through, but they're strengthening their own marketing and communications, strengthening relationships with their B2B partners because they're already giving them empirical data about their impacts, and then aligning with the shifting expectations in the market as well. Okay, so I know that was brief, but I hope I hit all the points for you in terms of what we tackled on the project. And I would really just encourage everyone to sort of, just don't get left behind on this. In terms of retaining market share and positioning, it's going to be important to sort of get on this journey. So yeah, that's what we tackled. It was very exciting. And yeah, I hope we can do more of it in future.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Lisa. That's amazing. I noticed that we have come to the end of the webinar. There have been a few requests for getting links to the recordings. We will make the recording available. I think in terms of the questions in the Q&A chat, I think there is a very valid question around context specific, that, you know, to what extent are particularly global criteria, guidelines, etc., relevant to local context, for example, township context. But I think, I hope that Lisa kind of answered that to some extent, that part of this project was to actually understand what operators see as important and relevant to the local context. And some of the tour operators that actually participated are predominantly township-based tour operators. Michelle, I love your question around requirements specifically for tourist guides. A lot of the certification programs do tend to focus more on the tour operator side. But I definitely will discuss this with Hanti, the provincial registrar, and perhaps we can have a session later on this year specifically focusing on tourist guides. And that seems to be, I think, the main questions that came through. But what we will also do is we will circulate, as I mentioned, the link. We are going to also circulate a summary of the project and the outcomes. And then lastly, we will also just do a poll again to understand whether there are businesses who would possibly be interested in participating in a similar project of this nature. With that, thank you very much. Thank you for joining our webinar. Thank you to my panelists, Kotso, Almay, and then obviously Lisa. And lastly, also thank you to my incredible DEDAT team for putting this all together. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.